By the end of 2020, should you be comparing your camera with other camera brands, or should you actually be comparing your camera and your thoughts about the future of your system actually with your use case? G'day everybody, how are you going today? It is so very good to see you. Now I think there's a little bit of a paradigm shift happening in the world right now, in the camera world, as Panasonic, Sony, Canon, Nikon are all getting out cameras which are sitting and will be sitting in a very similar place by the end of this year. And for this, it makes me ask myself the question, do I really need to compare camera specs with other camera specs anymore? If I buy into one of these systems, if I buy into the second gen Canon or the second gen Nikons, which we will see very soon, the latest Sonys or the latest versions of the Panasonics like the S5, are these cameras all in such similar spaces that seriously we don't have to compare them with each other anymore? We actually have to compare them with our use case. Indeed, that might seem to be like a crazy idea, but I think what we're going to be seeing now, I suspect the next thing we will see from Sony is the A7 IV, and that will be a technologically powerful camera, no question. But in regards to what Canon are doing, Nikon are doing, Panasonic are doing, Sony are doing, they are all going to be jostling in very much the same space. All these manufacturers have a 24 megapixel camera. They're all similarly priced and they're all similarly spec'd. And it really, really depends on your use case as to which direction you would go. But that is if you're starting fresh. And my thought is today, if you're like me, and I suspect probably something like 90% of people that look at cameras today, you're somebody who is already invested in a system. You have two choices when you're already invested in a system. You can try to continue to work with that system as lenses and batteries and accessories continue to work, or you can sell off your entire system, usually at quite a large loss, 50% or more, and start new. Sure, that's an option. But again, as I would conject, in 2020, by the time we see all the cameras released and everybody's got their latest versions of everything out, I'm not sure there's going to be a particularly strong reason to change. There is not going to be any place where a camera manufacturer is completely failing to deliver any solution at all. Some people would have you think that camera companies are completely failing to deliver a solution. I think that's incorrect. I think all camera manufacturers are delivering solutions. It depends on what you want. It depends on what your skill level is. It depends on what your expectations are. It depends on what you expect to get for your dollars. Because I've been around a long time, I think my tolerances are quite high. My expectations, to put it another way, are quite low. I understand that cutting edge technology is difficult. And I also know that as a craftsperson, I'm interested in continuing to be a craftsperson and not rely basically on a computer taking over large chunks of what I do. It's simply what I enjoy. I really do enjoy the craft of making an image. And still to this day, I manually select my focus and I manually select ISO, shutter, and aperture, even with all of the technology that we have today. To bring me back to my starting point, I think once we have all this generation of cameras, ultimately, you are not comparing your camera against another camera, because whatever camera you have is going to be amazing if you have bought in to the latest system from Canon, Sony, Panasonic, or Nikon by the end of 2020. So then this is what I want you to do. This is what's really important to me moving forward for you is if you were thinking about buying a new camera at the end of 2020, which includes Nikon's second generation, because pretty much everybody else has released their high-end cameras for the year this year, or you are already in a system like the one you're in. You might be in a mirrorless system or in a DSLR system. What is your use case? Rather than what is the fastest spec, anywhere that I look, I can find a camera that is absolutely bleeding edge. For example, you go, oh, geez, I like the idea of 8K. I have to buy a Canon, but I'm completely invested in Sony. Well, is that really your use case? How often are you really going to use it? Are you going to accept maybe a loss of $5,000 or $10,000 in selling your second-hand equipment just to get 8K, which you'll play with once or twice and then go, well, that was fun? I don't think it's realistic. I think you should stick with your Sony. Absolutely. And assuming that Nikon addresses focus tracking and brings it on par into the same arena as its competitors, imagine you've got a deep investment in the Z system, but you've suddenly decided you want slightly faster focus because you've been looking at what the Sonys are doing. It just doesn't make any sense to me that you would spend all that money for perhaps a very small incremental change. So again, I don't think we should be laboring on, is the grass a little bit greener with Frank or Bobby's camera? Oh gosh, it can shoot 8K. Oh gosh, it can shoot 120 FPS in 4K video. Oh, the focus is, I don't even know how to measure it, slightly faster. Don't worry about that. What's your use case? For example, if you're like me, you shoot portraits, which are called a sitting, by the way, so people are usually not moving. You're shooting landscapes, mountains, they don't move. You're shooting cityscapes, buildings, they don't move either. You're shooting lifestyle, which is usually people going about their life. They're not moving quickly. There are plenty of examples of what plenty of people are doing where if they look at their use case, why make that massive loss? Now, if you're starting fresh, if you've got no investment and you're new to photography and you know that high speed, the cutting edge focus is what you need, then that's a different story. You've got nothing to lose and you can go for that. But again, you've got to look at your use case, because your use case may well be, I'm going to be lying in the jungle in a hide. I'm going to have my eye up to the viewfinder the entire time. I need my camera to be bulletproof, weatherproof, dustproof, everything the best that the world's got. I need the batteries to last as long as possible. And I don't want to take my eye from the EVF. Well, in that case, you'll be looking for the camera which has the best ergonomics. The camera that can perhaps charge its battery whilst the camera's on. And of course, the camera that's got the best weather sealing. Because, who knows what you're shooting in the jungle? You're going to work out your use case. So I really, again, this to me is just a conversation starter video. I'm actually not wanting to compare the specs of cameras, but what I'm trying to implore to everybody out there is don't get too caught up on the ever march. There's just the constant march of which camera's better, which camera's slightly faster, which one's got the slightly higher res, which one's got the most frames per second, which one focuses, all of this stuff. This is constantly marching and constantly changing. And your use case, like mine, I can still basically get the shots that I want to get with a camera that is 10, 20, 30, 40 years old. I can still do that. I can probably get the shots that I want with my Pentax K1000, which does segue me slightly over to the fact that I'm going to maybe pull out some of my old film cameras and have a go. If anybody thinks that's a good idea, let me know. I never thought I'd do it, but someone who I've got a lot of respect for, who we've been talking for a couple of years in the comments, has suggested I have a play with film. So I'm taking that on board. But anyway, my use case is, my Hasselblad, which shoots 1 frame a second, 1.5 frames a second, and focus is just ridiculously slow. I love that camera. So my use case is, I don't need half the technology that exists in these cameras today. So think super hard about your use case rather than worrying about the grass being greener, rather than worrying about the gas. Changing systems will cost you a lot of money, and it'll cost you a lot of money that you could put towards staying in the system that you're in and investing in other elements of that system. Finally, just reiterate the fact that depending on your use case, all of the cameras that we will have seen by the end of this year, they all are going to be sitting in the same sort of space. And just depending on your use case, you might go for this one or that one or this one or that one. It just depends. You know what your use case is. Look hard at that, and that's what should drive the direction that you're heading in. No question. But I do think by the end of 2020 and into 2021, it really isn't going to matter too much which camera you buy in regards to the specs. And I think it's going to be more about which glass has the right feel for you, which lenses feel right, which selection of lenses feel right, and the ergonomics and the weather sealing and those sort of things, because the specifications will all become so similar. All right, everybody, like I said, this is just a bit of a conversation starter. To reiterate what the conversation is, should you be, by the end of 2020, should you be comparing your camera with other camera brands, or should you actually be comparing your camera and your thoughts about the future of your system actually with your use case? You tell me, use case or the grass is greener other brands? I would love to hear that from you in the comments below. All right, everybody, as usual, it has been spectacular to see you. And if this is your first time here, how wonderful to meet you. I would love to see you again. So please subscribe, please share, please like, and I look forward to seeing you very soon talking about what we love: photography, taking photos, creating magic, and talking about gear. All right, see you later. This thing is still ridiculous. Oh my God. I don't know. How much does it weigh? It is just so big. For those who haven't seen that, this is the Nikon 200-400 f4 through the range VR2. It's going to be time to take it out for a spin soon, I think. Another spin. See what we can do. I think I'll pop it on the Z6 or the Z7 and we'll just have a play. And as soon as I can get the teleconverter, I want to put the 70-200 Z version against this one, and we'll see what they look like.